too woke?
I think there's a lot of talk about all this, but you know what? Right now, what people care about and what I care about is their health and their jobs.
Yeah, true.
And I'm just focused on that. And if people want to talk about woke, and if they're woke enough or not woke enough, or they're too woke, or, you know, who cares?
Well, actually, I care, and a lot of people care, but I will talk about it, Prime Minister, and hopefully you will listen, because you clearly have no idea what a pernicious and sinister ideology wokeness is, and how it is blighting the lives of an entire generation. Your generation, Prime Minister, those kids growing up in the Morrison years. And their confusion and their unhappiness will be your legacy. Wokeness began as a slang term for being awakened or politically aware, and it stems from African American slang where people would say, I was asleep, but now I'm woke. It's been around since the 1940s, but in the last couple of years has become a description for a whole swag of leftists, such as social justice warriors, climate change activists, and so-called anti-racist activists who see themselves as woke or awakened to all the grievous injustices meted out by straight white men against everyone else. Injustices that they magically alone appear to be able to see. Linda Sarsour, the controversial Palestinian-American activist, summed it up best when she said, and she was proud of it, that being woke means being outraged all the time. Anger, which she is, and she's not alone. Critical to the woke anger movement, and absolutely fundamental to those who see themselves as woke, is an unshakable belief in critical race theory. This is the idea that we've spoken about many times on this show, that is now taught in our universities, schools, and increasingly you'll hear it in the boardrooms of big corporations. The idea is that all white people are inherently racist, even when they think they are not. And all white people live lives of privilege from the moment they are born. And that all white people constantly and continually oppress non-whites in all aspects of their lives. And here's the really neat trick. If you disagree and claim that this is not true and that you are not a racist, well, that is absolute proof that you are a racist. Your bias, you see, is unconscious. You are so racist, you're not even aware that you're a racist. It is this topsy-turvy belief, this critical race theory, this being woke, that allows people like Green Senator Lydia Thorpe to make and to presumably believe divisive and ridiculous comments like these.
Not going to sit here and listen to a bunch of white people telling me racism happens when people feel that it is okay to treat other people badly. I know that's difficult for you to understand, Senator over there with the face happening, but...
Excuse me, Senator Thorpe, that's not appropriate.
Or when people abuse others by calling them racist names or abusing them verbally or physically, in what the colonisers called Gippsland. We have a war on our hands between white Australia and black Australia. What a joke. Racism is always about power. Australia is a place that is racist to its very foundations. I'm an angry black woman, scared of brown and black people. Racism isn't always visible. It doesn't always look like the absolutely horrific abuse that I get on social media or the physical letters that I get sent to my office calling me all sorts of hurtful and racist names. I know, as a black woman, the idea that white is right, it's very close to my heart that a bunch of white people are talking about owning water. And in terms of the Aboriginal money or the black money, the white money and all of that, it is all money that's been stolen from us and all wealth that's been stolen from us.
Perpetually outraged. Indeed, most of what Lydia Thorpe says there is being taught as fact to our children at school and dressed up in fancy robes as legitimate academic subjects in our universities. But this agenda is both sinister and dangerous. A case has gone to court in Nevada where a mother, Gabrielle Clark, has filed a lawsuit against her son's school because her son refused to confess in class to his white dominance. What went on in that classroom sounds like something out of Pol Pot's Kampuchea. The boy was forced to take a mandatory sociology of change course at this particular school. I've long warned, by the way, parents and grandparents to look very closely at exactly what is being taught in these spurious-sounding courses. And in this sociology of change course, the boy was told to publicly reveal his race, his gender, his religion, and his sexual identity, which is illegal, by the way, in the workforce, but anyway, you're allowed to do it in school. And then this boy was told to attach derogatory labels to each of his identities. Students were then asked to undo and unlearn their beliefs, their attitudes, and their behaviours because they all stem from oppression. Sound familiar? Remember that Unlearn campaign that Sydney Uni was pushing a couple of years ago? Now you know where it came from. Anyway, the mother says her son was understandably reluctant to label himself as privileged or an oppressor to the rest of the class, even though the teacher threatened to fail him if he didn't. And if that's not sinister enough, her son happened to be the only student in the class who looks white. He has light skin and green eyes, but wait for it, he's not. He is, in fact, of mixed race. According to her lawyer, this is happening all over the country. And I guarantee if it isn't already happening here, it soon will be. But this woke garbage is being pushed hard and was also, of course, the ideology behind Harry and Meghan's Oprah interview. As I write in my editorial in The Spectator Australia this week, by playing the race card in such a sinister, devious, calculated, unverifiable, and indeed incredible fashion, only months after race riots based upon the lie of systemic racism and white supremacy tore America apart, and much of the world, Harry and Meghan have sought to besmirch Britain's royal family in the most despicable manner, and with a selfishness so brazen it could only have come from pampered and blinkered millennials. But fortunately, some brave people are starting to wake up to woke. Last week, also in America, the Republican Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina, not that it is important, but he happens to be black, he coined a great phrase, woke supremacy. And what he went on to say is that woke supremacy is every bit as dangerous and as unacceptable as white supremacy. Scott recognises wokeness for precisely what it is. Woke means racism, it means prejudice, it means shame and segregation based on the colour of your skin. The absolute opposite to everything Martin Luther King and so many other great African Americans fought so hard to achieve. Also last week, the respected Egyptian-American pastor Michael Youssef issued a strong condemnation of woke. Woke evangelical churches is what he was talking about, and he warned that the spewing of far-left ideology from the pulpit is deadly as far as the gospel of Jesus Christ is concerned. And he wrote, or he said, bowing to woke culture is a very popular message that is now being preached from many evangelical pulpits. Traditionally Bible-believing, gospel-preaching churches are now preaching wokeness, he says, because people want to be liked on social media. It's all about the likes. But Youssef warned, young people must realise that this is a deception. It's very subtle and it's very clever, but it is a deception. Mr. Morrison might like to ponder those comments from a pastor from his own church. A good friend of this show is the writer and intellectual Melanie Phillips. You can read her on melaniephillips.substack.com. Writing about how Western values are under unprecedented and ferocious assault from the woke culture, she points out that across the West, conservatives are being silenced by left-wingers intoxicated with their own cultural power. Universities and high schools, she says, have morphed from crucibles of knowledge and reason into propaganda platoons, indoctrinating and intimidating students into endorsing androgyny, apocalyptic climate change, and a hatred of capitalism, a hatred of white people, and a hatred of the West. And of course, combined with that, bigotry against Jews and Israel is rampant. Melanie goes on to point out how this cultural crisis was highlighted by the fawning approval to the Harry and Meghan interview, which she labelled as morally bankrupt. Melanie says, what kind of daughter-in-law behaves like this towards her husband's family? What kind of a son behaves like Prince Harry in making bitter accusations about his father in public? This has become a terrifying looking-glass world, she writes, where morality has been turned back to front. It's where, in the minds of millions, particularly the young, venality, disloyalty, and spite register as evidence of moral worth. This reversal of truth and falsehoods, justice and injustice, victim and victimizer has been accelerating over several decades, Melanie writes. And she goes on, biblical morality has been junked in favour of universalising ideologies such as moral and cultural relativism. These have replaced the notion of objective truth with subjective opinion. What is right or true has become what is right or true for me, echoed in Oprah's grating reference to Meghan's claims as your truth.
How do you feel about the palace hearing you speak your truth today?
Your truth. What a joke. There is only the truth. However, Melanie Phillips concludes the responsibility for this crisis of moral failure doesn't only lie with the left, who subscribe to these wacky ideas, but also to all those conservatives who have conspicuously and repeatedly failed to fight against them and speak against them. As far as I'm concerned, the woke revolution seeks to deliberately foment hatred between Australians, to break us down into warring tribes, to create a fraudulent and corrupt morality based on historical lies, and to generate a spiralling sense of permanent outrage on the one hand and remorseless, unforgiving and unforgiven shame on the other, and embed them as our twin national characteristics. Scott Morrison, where are you? And if you won't lead the fight against woke supremacy and woke tyranny, can you please recommend someone who will?